107.1 FM. If you can hear us in White on W93.5 around the world, we're streaming live on 3news.com. Coming up this afternoon, residents of La here in Accra pour onto the streets protesting government's failure to complete the redevelopment of the La General Hospital more than 3 years after the demolition of the old structure. We're live to the Independence Square where they've been massing up all throughout the morning. Also this afternoon, organized labor remain resolute in their refusal to countenance any proposals from government to use pension funds in a revised debt restructuring program. We hear from them, plus a labor analyst on the threat of a shutdown of the public sector. And much later, Conference of Heads of Assisted Secondary Schools urges Ghana Education Service and the Education Ministry to prioritize addressing infrastructure deficits in schools, even as investigations continue into the Ganasco viral video. We have details of these stories and a lot more if you stay with us for the next 30 minutes. A pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's bulletin. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. It's streaming live on Facebook. Our handles 3FM 927, as well as on Facebook and on Twitter. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. Let's settle for the details now. We're starting from here in the capital, where residents of La are this afternoon on the streets protesting the failure of government to complete the reconstruction of the La General Hospital. Government in July 2020 demolished the old structure following concerns over the structural integrity of the facility, with a promise to have a new structure up in 2 years' time. That promise, however, has not materialized despite several calls by a resident and members of the Health Committee of Parliament. This afternoon, the residents are demanding immediate action from government following a massing up at the Independence Square. We'll take you there shortly for some details as to exactly what's been happening. But here's one of the leaders there speaking to the media.
1 year, what be Epalake, and yeah, one day she aganya she akalama la manke one tesi akumo clinic.
So that's one of the leaders stating that they were promised after the demolition that the new infrastructure will be put up in 2 years, but unfortunately that has not happened. That's why they are on the streets this afternoon demanding urgent intervention from government. In fact, we here at 3FM some months ago spoke to the Health Ministry, who again assured residents to exercise patience as government was working to have the hospital project and work there started in earnest. Sarah Apenkro is my colleague. She's at the Independence Square, which was the convergence point for the resident of La this afternoon in their protest. She'll join us on phone. Then we'll connect with the Health Committee of Parliament as well and get an understanding as to exactly what briefing has been provided them by the Health Ministry over the failure of government to start the reconstruction of the La General Hospital. While you're listening to the news on 3FM 92.7, we're streaming live on Facebook. Our handles 3FM 927. Sarah Pencross joined us on phone. She's got details of exactly what the residents have been saying. Sarah, walk us through their demands again and what they want from government.
Well, Eric, the youth of Gandangwe, who make up of the Gamashi, the La, Teshi, and all, have today demonstrated. In fact, they started from the Obra spot to the Independence Square, where I am currently reporting from. They are saying, among other things, that they want government to, with immediate effect, construct the La General Hospital that was demolished somewhere in 2020. They are also asking that the Salaja market, which was also demolished, that a new market will be built for the people of La, be rebuilt, because they complained the women go to the market and sell under the sun. They mentioned several other things which is in the petition they presented to the Deputy Chief of Staff, Adoma Bosman, who in turn took the petition and promised to inform the President when he resumes office tomorrow on their concerns. They have actually given government a 2 weeks ultimatum to respond favorably to the concerns they have raised in the petition, else they would take other series of actions. And the demonstration today is actually not ending today. Next week, Tuesday, they are going to hold another one, specifically at Labadi, where they are going to raise specific issues regarding the La General Hospital demolition and how it is affecting the lives of the people of that particular enclave.
So it's a series of activities planned to drum home the message and get government to reconstruct the hospital. But were they pleased with the response from the the person who came from the presidency?
Certainly, the Deputy Chief of Staff said he's just a messenger and he has taken their concerns. They are also in the country and they see what is happening. He assured them the president is also not happy with the development, but he will convey their message and assure them that he's also an indigene of Gamashi, so he would ensure that their petition receives the needed attention.
Right then, that's my colleague Sarah Pencrow providing details from the Independence Square, where a resident of Gamashi, or the youth of Gamashi today, or Gadangbe I should say, protested in demand for the reconstruction of the La General Hospital. Dr. Sebastian Sandare is a member of the Health Committee of Parliament as well. He's joined us on phone essentially to get an understanding as to exactly what sort of briefing the Health Committee of Parliament has received over the lack of work at that particular site. Dr. Sandare, many thanks for joining us on phone. So another protest organized by a resident there. Is there an understanding from the Health Committee, from the ministry, why after 2 years, it's nearing 3, the government has still not put up the structure which it promised nearly 3 years ago?
Right, thank you very much, my brother. The only understanding I can say from the committee is that we have been misled and given false assurance by the Ministry of Health, the Minister for Health specifically, because this project is of serious concern to the Health Committee. In this case, not just minority members, but the entire Health Committee, consisting of the majority members and the minority members, because we don't understand why that project has still not gotten to any meaningful percentage. You recollect that the minority side of the committee went to really inspect and see things for ourselves. Nothing is happening. Yet the minister, anytime his team appears before the Health Committee, the assurance is that, work is ongoing, work is and up till date, nothing is happening. And you can't take the people for granted. So what is happening there, is the people's right, because they have the right to health care. They have the right to quality health care. And if they don't have that health facility, where do you expect them to go? So it is the Minister for Health who should answer to those protesting why that project, after the pressure we have been giving our Health Committee, yet the project hasn't gone anywhere.
So is it a case that as you as Health Committee members have not received proper briefing from the ministry as to why this project continues to stall? Can the committee take any action going forward over the lack of progress with this particular facility?
Yes, we would definitely, take action, but that will be guided by the leadership of the committee. I know the the ranking Honorable Akando, this is so passionate about this project that I know at a point he will be speaking, on it, because we see it as a major project that should be done for the people of La. And
right.
Even during the budget consideration, we look at all this. We brought those in charge of the infrastructure, Agenda 111 on those things. And, this last project was one of the areas, Honorable Akando and even the chairman of the committee were so passionate about, and we're asking questions. And, anytime we ask the minister these questions, only assurance that he has never
continues
fulfilled.
to offer.
So one of the actions that will be taken, I believe, is that he made appear before, the assurance committee of parliament. Because when you give assurance and you don't fulfill, the committee has that right to call you before them,
right,
for you to answer questions while you continue to give assurance that you don't fulfill.
Right then, Doc, I appreciate that you could speak to us. That's Dr. Sebastian Sandare. He's a member of the Health Committee of Parliament, and we've tried getting responses from the Health Ministry after this latest protest from the residents. But the general concern continues to remain when work will begin again on the reconstruction of the La General Hospital. They say that they are going to get proper briefing, and as and when they do get that, we'll bring that to you here on 3FM 92.7. And from one concern of citizens to what appears to be another, and organized labor this afternoon is remaining unanimous in their resolve to reject any overtures from the finance minister to consider using pension funds of workers in an alternative restructuring program. A statement signed by Ken Oforiatta on Friday urged the Board of Trustees of pension funds to allow the funds to be included in government's new proposed debt restructuring offer aimed at alleviating the cash constraint on the government in the coming years, while fully compensating the pension funds for the value of their current holdings. But this has been roundly rejected by the various groups. My colleague Komla Adom has been putting together the reactions in this report.
It is not the first time organized labor has been loud in their position over the use of pension funds for government's controversial domestic debt exchange program.
I think there was also discussions about the pension funds which we were excluded. We did indicate last time of the MOU that we had signed with them. And we should be clear that in the MOU we agreed to pursue mutually beneficial options within the debt sustainability limits, as we continue that. So those discussions continue to be going on, and we're engaging them. So I'm not sure what the interpretation of that to mean in the second round of the DAP.
The group made up of the National Association of Teachers, NAT, National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT, CLOCSAG, Judicial Service Staff Association, Federation of Labour, Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, the Ghana Medical Association and others say government should find other means of carrying out its debt restructuring. A statement made public on Friday, signed by Ken Oforiatta after meeting with pension fund managers, urged the Board of Trustees of pension funds to allow the monies to be included in government's new proposed debt restructuring offer. The new program is aimed at alleviating the cash constraints on the government in the coming years while fully compensating the pension funds for the value of their current and by the parties in December 2022.
In the sense of any relationship, I think that it's best for one party to call on the other party that maybe I'm making reference to the MOU signed that we'll be doing A, B, C, D. So we are now ready, come and let's talk. But if that has not come, and one party sits somewhere and says that he's referring to the MOU and started bringing an option, I don't think it's very fair. In any case, we have stated in the original MOU, which said that our pensions has been exempted. And you know the reason why we fought for that exemption from this debt exchange program.
So that is a report put together by my colleague Komla Adom. Let's get on the phone. Austin Gama is a labor expert. He, in fact, in the past has called on labor to be mindful of the times we're in and help government navigate the difficulties we find ourselves presently as a country and an economy. Let's pick his thoughts as to this brewing storm. Many thanks, Mr. Game, for speaking to us this afternoon. So, a storm really is brewing on the labor front over these new proposals for pension funds to be used in a restructuring of the country's debt. How does the government go around this, with labor already sounding the alarm bells that they would cause disaffection and disharmony in the labor front?
Thank you so much. Look, let me be very honest with you. Like I was telling your colleagues on the TV, I formed part of the commissioners that I was one of the commissioners that wrote this pension scheme. And I must confess that pension matters are emotional because it's lifeblood. Somebody who has come of age is managed just like when somebody is a baby. Because when you come of retirement and you are of age, you are no more hot. You cannot be yourself in its entirety. You have to respond to everything differently. And therefore, that is the spirit in which we wrote the pension scheme. And it was painstakingly done. That's why we introduced leaving the first tier, which is the Social Security. We introduced the second tier and introduced the third tier. And we involved everybody. It was the total inclusion. Now, this way that government as an employer is going, you will only expect this kind of reaction, which shouldn't be the case. Therefore, the way out is to sober and make sure that inclusion or inclusivity is not going to be a figure of speech. You cannot instruct people whose money are being invested for their future. Like I described for you, when they come of age, they are completely vulnerable. And because they are vulnerable, there are people who are sick. There are people who can die anytime. There are people who are completely like a baby, a toddler. You cannot use their money in a manner that it pleases you, especially from a political point of view. So it is very dangerous step that they are taking. And they should have engaged some of us. We are alive, we are not dead. Who told them their essence? I mean, there are people who also have knowledge about these things, and we are many in this country.
So what would be the advice to government? They stay off the pension funds? What would be the advice?
Look, government needs help. And I want to say, categorically that because government needs help, and not just merely government, the nation needs help, they must open up themselves for people to support them in achieving what they want to achieve. So get the people who own the money. They own the money, not you. So that you invite them to a table and look, I have a problem. This is my problem. This is the situation. Can we brainstorm how we can do this? Are there alternatives? What are the options? What else can we do to solve this problem?
Right.
That is going to be the approach. So you are using what I maybe will call attachment. You are using by force. You are using pressure. You want to take the money anyhow you want to do it and call it alternative. We don't do that. I support government if they have a certain problem. It's a genuine problem, which I think they have. They should invite people to the table.
But you genuinely believe
I'm ready to help them if they want.
This is not the way. Mr. Game, I appreciate that you could speak to us this afternoon.
You're welcome.
That's Austin Game. He is a labor analyst, and as you heard him say, one of the very leading voices in even drafting the Pensions Act and its regulations as we have it. We'll move away from this, and the Conference of Heads of Assisted Secondary Schools, CHAS, they've called for urgent fixing of infrastructural deficit at senior high schools across the country. It follows the launch of a 2-week probe into the content of a viral video which captured some student of Ganasco in Tamale allegedly using a toilet cubicle as a dormitory. Education watchers, however, say the issue goes beyond what was captured in the video. Already, school authorities and the Northern Regional Minister have dismissed the claims of accommodation crisis on the campus. But the president of the Conference of Assisted Secondary Schools, CHAS, Reverend Father Stephen Usu-Setra, wants infrastructural deficits in senior high schools fixed.
I know very well that we have some deficits there in terms of infrastructure in our schools. You see, when you talk of infrastructure, we're not talking only about dormitories, talk of classrooms and all that. I mean, management of GS is aware that we have challenges in our schools in terms of infrastructure. And one of the of this problem is for some of the schools to use what we call the transitional calendar. That is when they took away the green and gold tracks. Now we don't have Form 1 students divided into 2, green and gold, anymore. You don't have Form 2 students divided into 2, green and gold. You don't have Form 3 students divided into 2, green and gold. But what we are doing now is that, yes, the numbers that the school, for example, come to Pokua school, my school, we are almost 4,000. And if you check the numbers, Pokua school with its classrooms and the dormitories will not be able to accommodate all these almost 4,000 students at the same time. So what we are doing now is that instead of green and gold, Form 2 students will always come and pair with Form 3 students, and then they spend some time in school, they will vacate, and then the Form 1 students will come. Anytime a school is able to complete some of the infrastructure facilities that were on campus that were not completed, then the school will write and then wean itself off.
That's the president of CHAS, Reverend Father Stephen Usu-Setra. In a not so related development, though, the headmaster of the Fijai Senior High School has been interdicted by the Ghana Education Service. A brief statement says that Mr. Kenneth Agbomaje was interdicted with immediate effect pending a further investigation into an alleged collection of illegal fees in the school. You're listening to the news here on 3FM 92.7. We're streaming live on Facebook. Our handles 3FM 927, as well as on Twitter 3FM 927. Our attention now to issues that dominated conversations last week, and the two leading political parties have been directed by the Ghana Police Service to cease fire following a meeting called at the instance of the Inspector General of Police. It follows the two counter petitions presented to the CID by the two parties for the arrest of Agric Minister Brian Echampo and former President John Mahama over the alleged use of language described as insightful. Political analysts and governance advocates, they took turns to condemn the use of the said language, but on Monday, the IGP met leadership of the two parties, and the police, amongst many other things, says that they have established the Police Election Security Secretariat, one of the very first interventions to work with all political parties and other stakeholders to enhance the management of security for elections. A security analyst, Emmanuel Kuti, has been reacting to it as well, but Professor Bafwa Jimendia, he's a former senior governance advisor to the UN. He'll join us on phone with quick thoughts as well as to what this latest intervention from the police means, and if it is the solution to inappropriate language, as is unfortunately gradually becoming a part of Ghanaian politics. You're listening to the news here on 3FM 92.7. Professor Bafwa Jimendia, he is a UN governance advisor. He's joined us on phone now. We can pick his thoughts briefly. Many thanks, Prof, for speaking to us this afternoon. So last week, the political parties, they came under criticism over the use of what has been largely described as insightful language. The IGP has since met them and has, among other things, proposed certain interventions, the establishment of the Police Election Security Secretariat to handle some of these matters. Is this a step in the right direction in your opinion?
So I think the IGP has done well by stepping into this at this very early stage of our electoral process. You know, towards every election in our country, we get a lot of tension from the way the political parties relate to each other. In fact, in recent times, when these accusations of somebody making incendiary statements and the response that we got, it was really getting out of control. Imagine two political parties, the two dominant political parties, reporting each other to the Inspector General. If you are the Inspector General, what can you do? You know, so I think they really put the Inspector General in a bind. So this decision by the Inspector General of Police to invite the parties to consult with them and to come out with a decision that they should mind their own politics and leave the police, for me, it's a great step. But that's what means for me is that the police is going to be very proactive going forward. They wouldn't have to wait when somebody has infringed the rule before to be reported to before they take action. I think they should be very proactive going forward so that the parties will know that if they go on the wrong side of the road, the police will be there to bring them back on track. So I think it's a great effort by the Inspector General of Police.
Just finally, the expectation going forward, what would it be? There are those who make the case that this meeting comes off as a cancellation of all old sins, and that going forward, the expectation should be that the police would take action on anybody who makes some of these comments going forward, such that there will not be the argument pointing back to comments made in the past. What will be the expectation of the police should a statement like that be made in the future?
I think the police should put the political parties on the alert towards such statements that they've been making. I think that with this meeting with the parties themselves will have to remind themselves going forward that such statements that will disturb the public peace can no longer be tolerated. And I think I should also add that the swift public reaction to these statements were also helpful.
Right.
I think the parties should be aware that Ghanaians are not ready for any needless political tension. We don't want that. So the police intervening, I'm sure that there's understanding that those who were reported or the petitions that were sent to the police, I'm sure they will suspend all these petitions and counter petitions and just make sure they put on the best behavior going forward so that there'll be no need for the police to step into these matters anymore. So I'm quite happy the action that has been taken by Mr. Dampare, the IGP. And I think he should continuously be talking to them privately to constantly reminding them of their responsibility to this country. This country needs peace to move on.
Right, and Prof, I appreciate that you could speak to us this afternoon.
Most welcome.
That's Professor Bafo Ajiman Dua. He is a UN governance advisor speaking to us this afternoon, and with workers of the Tema Oil Refinery who are asking government to revamp the refinery to help save the country from its current economic challenges. Bernard Owusu is national chair of the General Transport, Petroleum and Chemical Workers Union of TUC. He's been speaking to 3FM.
You brought competent people here. They understand that control is a management function. And so they will put controls in place to make sure that the ordinary worker is more efficient and prudent in his decision. So once you bring incompetent board and incompetent management, this is the result you get. And so the appointer of these executives, the appointers of this top management at the refinery must sit up. It should not be political expediency. They should not bring people here as a reward of political actions they did during campaign. They should bring competent and efficient people to the refinery. That is where we will see the efficiency and the progress we all expect in this refinery. The tall worker, ordinary worker, is serious, is prudent, is hardworking, and is intelligent. We have shown it everywhere that we have worked. And so we are calling for the leaders to do the needful and make sure that the refinery works to the progress of the country and the refinery worker. Thank you.
Bernard Owusu is National Chair of the General Transport, Petroleum and Chemical Workers Union of TUC, ending this afternoon's edition of the news here on 3FM 92.7. Nanekia Mensa Brampa, she's on standby to bring us the very latest from the world of business. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. Pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's bulletin.
Hello, good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us on Business Daily. Coming up this afternoon, convener of the Individual Bond Holders Forum insists government's latest offer to Labour for a possible debt restructuring is only offloading a chunk of the debt burden to a future government. Also, the World Bank wants the Bank of Ghana and other African economies to find solutions to the supply side of the economy instead of just hiking rates.
It has come from interest rate increases that come from, rich countries that then lead to spillover effects that, depress currencies, lead to currency depreciations in our countries.
And Ghana expects to create 1.4 million jobs while generating some $1.5 billion from the tourism sector by 2027.
These surveys would help us put together a tourism satellite account and track the country's potential in gaining the 1.4 million jobs that we seek to get.
We have all the details in the next 10 minutes. Please stay with us. My name is Nanekia Mensa Brampa. Let's get to the details now. As convener of the Individual Bondholders Forum, Senyor Hosi says government's current offer to Labour for a possible debt restructuring appears to be deferring a chunk of the debt burden to a future government. Commenting on TV3's Business Focus, Mr. Hosi said the current debt crisis facing the country will have to be addressed upfront if we are to attain debt sustainability.
The offer, categorical question to him. Will there be a second round of
maybe you may not call it DD, okay, but it is still a DD. Cocoa bills are on the table, so everybody holding cocoa bills already knows that matter is going to be discussed, because the cocoa bond bills are part of the general government debt that is causing the problem. So the holders of those bills would definitely have to face some part of the music. So there'll be something that's going to be restructured there. The conversations have started. This offer being made to the Labour? To Labour is a DD. It is a DD. I mean, let's just stop the semantics. Maybe, but the truth, to be fair to the ministry, is that the offer that it has put before Labour is technically great. It gives a win for government, and actually when you use them, I think a slightly better NPV. I mean, some report I may put before me, I have to review it again. But if what I see is that's what it is, and my guys are hardly wrong. Sometimes they make mistakes, but for what I gather, it's either netting zero on an NPV basis or actually giving them more in value when you want to look at it from an intrinsic value perspective.
Senyor Hosi is the convener of the Individual Bondholders Forum. Now, the World Bank wants the Bank of Ghana and other African economies to find solutions to the supply side of the economy instead of just hiking rates. Chief economist for the World Bank, Andrew Dublin, says increasing interest rates to fight inflation could be ineffective in situations where the drivers are not demand-driven. Globally, prices have reached levels not seen in decades. The Bank of Ghana has since responded in equal measure with more than 1,500 basis points hikes to contain the soaring inflation Only that, its hawkish rate increases did little to contain the pressures as businesses and households struggle to survive. Analysts criticized the central bank for the hikes as pressures driving inflation were not demand-driven, but supply-constrained. The latest to add to voices in support of this argument is the World Bank's chief economist for Africa, Andrew Daberlin.
There's a case to be made that the inflationary pressures in a country, in a lot of our developing countries, and especially in African countries, are not always demand-driven, right? So in that sense, you might begin to wonder that maybe interest rates, which are really targeted at suppressing demand, may not be an effective tool.
The World Bank's economists urge central banks to identify the key drivers of inflation and tackle them, warning that rising prices threaten stability.
It is come out of the Russia war in Ukraine, which has led to food and fuel inflation. It has come from interest rate increases that come from rich countries that then lead to spillover effects that depress currencies. Lead to currency depreciations in our countries, which are then, with weak currencies, when you import, prices of imports are high, and therefore it leads to domestic inflation. So it's all supply shocks or external shocks.
And let's move on to one of our headline stories this afternoon, as Ghana is targeting some 4.3 million arrivals in terms of tourists in 2027. That's according to government statistician Professor Samuel Kobna-Enim. He says that it is expected to rake in $1.5 billion, half of the money the country is seeking from the IMF as a bailout. The Ghana Statistical Service is conducting a domestic and outbound tourism survey to track the country's potential in the sector. And my colleague Eben Ejikum-Boateng has more in the following report.
The domestic and outbound tourism survey involves collecting, compiling, analyzing, and disseminating tourism information about the Ghanaians and non-Ghanaians in the country. Government statistician Professor Samuel Kobna-Enim says the survey will enable authorities to know the number of tourism-related information for comprehensive mapping and decision-making.
The Ministry of Tourism, Art and Culture is projecting that our tourism sector should be the #1 foreign exchange earner based on their strategic plan. So they're setting 2027 as the timeline where the tourism sector would be the #1 foreign exchange earner. And again, the ministry is projecting that by 2027, the sector should directly and indirectly create about 1.4 million jobs. These surveys would help us put together a tourism satellite account and track the country's potential in gaining the 1.4 million jobs that we seek to get, and also getting in excess of 1.5 billion USD from the sector.
And that was a report put together by my colleague Eben Ejikum-Boateng. Now, consumers will be paying more for goods and services when the 3 newly introduced taxes by government takes off, as the president has assented to these new bills now, which are now taxes. Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Magbe Dwabaje, tells Sweet Business, aside the increases in prices of goods and services, it could ultimately lead to job losses and business closures. Government expects to rake in some 4 billion cedis annually through the 3 new taxes, but the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry has a different view on this particular one.
Resolving inflation and you are increasing the cost of production in terms of piling up more taxes, you may end up pushing up inflation, and the result that we have achieved will be nothing. It may be difficult for the government to get a 4 billion. The reason being that if you take, for instance, the growth and sustainability levy is 5% of gross profit. The businesses are not making profit, so what are you going to tax?
Meanwhile, he fears more job losses and business closures could occur with this new move by the government.
It's not only the concern of businesses, particularly with this particular tax. Those who are seeking to get employment are going to be affected because businesses will collapse and will not be able to employ. Those who are already working will be laid off. So the businesses are also going through a number, and the consumer, you're also going to suffer because they're going to pay more in terms of prices because we cannot absorb.
And that was the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mark Bedu Abuajete. Just before we go, an energy expert, Dr. Yusuf Suleimana, has commended the National Petroleum Authority for reversing its decision to increase fuel marking margin to 9 pesos from 4 pesos. The NPA had directed oil marketing companies to implement the new rates and apply them in their price build-ups for March 16 this year. Dr. Yusuf Suleimana observed that some of the taxes and levies on the fuel price build-up have outlived their usefulness and needs to be scrapped to make the deregulation regime effective. We'll be giving you more into this particular report. But remember, when you log on to 3news.com, we have more business news updates. That's it for Business Daily this afternoon with me, Nana Ikuya Mensah Abrampa. Enjoy your lunch and have a good afternoon.